Hi everyone, in this CLO video we're going to be going over how to use the Tack tool. So I'm going to show you a couple different things that you can do with this tool, and the first one is how we can use it to tack fabric to our garment. So for example, if I had this dress right here and I wanted to tack two pieces of fabric together, so maybe I had a piece of fabric that I was draping with or experimenting with that I wanted to just tack onto my garment to see how it would look in a certain position. I would first just take that piece of fabric. So I'm just going to draw like a rectangle to use for this example. And say I wanted to have like a rectangular pattern piece just like attached somewhere to the waist here or something, adding like a ruffle or a drape or something like that. First, I can go to my tack tool, which is located in the 3D toolbar right here. It looks like that folded piece of fabric with a tack on top of it. I can click on that, and then I can click on any piece of fabric and then click on where I want it to be attached to. And then when I turn on simulation mode, it's going to be tacked right there. So if you wanted to experiment with like a piece of draped fabric before you were to sew it somewhere, you could always use this. So if I wanted to try again, I can also attach the tack in my 2D window too. So for example, if I'm trying to get to this upper left corner, that'll be kind of hard to do right now in my 3D window. So I can click there in my 2D window and then click where I want that to go in my 3D window also. And have that tacked just like that. Sometimes it can also be helpful if your fabric is kind of like crumpling up like this and you're not getting the look you want with the tacks. You can always right click on it and reset 2D arrangement for the selected piece. That will only reset this one piece that we're currently working on. I'm just going to move it a little bit closer to where it's going to be tacked to, and then turn on simulation mode. And you'll see now it's simulating a little bit differently. So you can use this tack tool just to kind of drape in that way, attaching fabric pieces to different fabric pieces, even a fabric piece that's not sewn to anything. I'm going to delete this pattern piece right here. We can also tack fabric from one pattern piece to the same pattern piece. So I'm just going to extend the length of this dress so that it's long, take the length of that and make the back match it. So I'm going to right click, change length, 44.365, I think it was 635. That's close enough for this example. Just making the back match that. And getting it to simulate. So for example, if I wanted to tack the bottom of this dress and maybe have it like sewn up here to create like a gathered effect or a bustle effect, then I could do that. So that's how we can attach fabric using the tack tool to each other. And so we know this isn't actually sewn together. So the tack tool is a really good way to kind of experiment and see if you want to actually sew this together. And then when you are ready to sew it together, like this example, we can see where the tacks are placed. So in order to sew here, to actually stitch these parts together, we would need to add an internal line because we know we can't just sew in the middle of a pattern. So since I can see where my tack actually is, I could go in here and create a little internal line around each of those tack dots. That would just be my stitch mark. And I'll link to my video on internal lines right here because it's something that you can do a lot more with that we're just going over really quickly. But I'm going to use free sewing on this to make sure that the sewing is exactly the same length. If you had made sure your internal lines were the exact same length, then you could also use the segment sewing tool also. But now that that tack has been sewn where it actually is, I'm going to go into the edit tack tool, which is that tool right above our tack. looking like just the pin with the cursor next to it. And I'm going to click delete to delete that tack. You'll notice that actually my garment has symmetric editing linked to it. So when I do this, it's actually going to sew the other side together too. But you can see that side actually didn't change at all. So it represented what our tack was doing pretty accurately. If I didn't want symmetric editing on, I could delete that center line and then delete these internal lines on that side. That would just give me the same look back on that one side. So that's how you can use a tack and then transform it to something actually in the pattern. And of course, go in and style it with your hand tool however you want. When we switch to high resolution mode, it will also be more realistic too. But that's a little bit of what you can do with the tack to fabric tool or just the regular tack tool. But if we hold down the tack tool, we'll also see we have the option to tack on avatar. This is something that you can do if your garment is not sitting exactly how you want it on the avatar. So for example, if I wanted this shoulder seam right here to sit a little further out and I had tried to use my hand tool to get it and it just wasn't working, I could always click on the fabric and then click where I want it on my avatar. And then when I turn on simulation mode, it will snap to that spot. So I could do the same thing on this side. And that will hold it in place there, even when I pull on it with my hand tool. But it's important to keep in mind that if your garment in CLO is not sitting how you want it to, your physical garment might not also. So you would want to use that tool with caution, just knowing that it might not be representing like what your actual physical garment will look like. But another thing that we can do with our tack to avatar tool is actually drape our garment too, or drape on our avatar. So I'm just going to click Command A and move this garment off to the side. And I'm actually going to go in and delete those tacks from the shoulders. And I'm just going to freeze that dress so that when we simulate, it won't fall to the ground since it's off our avatar now. And I'm going to draw like just a big rectangular piece of fabric. Then we have that in our 3D window, and I could go to my tack to avatar tool and click on some spots on my fabric and tack it to my avatar. And turn on simulation mode. And you can see this is actually kind of like draping on our avatar like we would with a physical piece of fabric too. And so we can go in and we can continue adding more tacks, or we can also edit the tacks too. So say I wanted this tack to be moved, I can click and drag, and that would edit where it's attached to. You can edit the tack that's on the fabric, but then you can also edit the back part that's on the avatar also. So you can always move around and play with that too. If you ever wanted to go into your tack tool, the edit tack tool, you can right click and you can click delete to delete any tack, but you can also click on it with your cursor and click delete on your keyboard. But that's the basics for using the tack tool. Thanks.